after high school or in high school. I'm not really sure, actually. I was very interested in politics in high school and in psychology, but also in architecture. And I started a course in architectural drawing after high school. And I found it to be very strict and precise. And there was a freedom that I needed in it. So I started some other courses in more visual arts in a school in Aarhus. I think I was there a year. And from that school, that was much more creative than the architecture school or the approach in architecture. And there was something about that that really got my attention. I moved to Copenhagen to start the art academy in 2007 and was there for, it's a 6-year study, and I was there for the first 3 years, and on my 4th year I took a year in London at Goldsmith University to do MA in gender studies, gender and culture. I was very interested in feminist history, feminist art history, and it was something that we touched a bit in the art academy, some teachers more than others, and I felt that there was something here that I really needed to know more about. So I graduated in 2013 at the art academy and actually made my first artwork for my graduation show. I was experimenting with some different materials and things the last year in art school and did the first major piece, and I was quickly invited to different shows after this. My focus at the art academy had been very much on making asylum politics, feminist reading groups, queer feminist reading groups, queer exhibition spaces, and not so much on the artwork as such. So it was quite a surprise for me that this final art show or graduation show kind of opened some doors for me, but it did. And I was so interested in the queer and trans art and scene in Berlin and wanted to move there for a while, stayed for a few years and worked there, and that has been very good for me. I've built up some very good friend connections, artistic connections, colleagues, gallery, but felt that it was also time for me to have my own printing press, because I started with woodcuts at my graduation piece and then continued with that since. Also did other things, more sculptural things, but always I kept on working with the woodcut printing. And the more I kind of fell in love with that media, the more I understood that at some point I would need to have my own printing machine. I had the opportunity to buy this big press that I have now, and I needed a place to have it, and yeah, for different reasons I ended up on Møn, where we are now in this studio, and I've been here a year and a half now. It really changed the way I can work, and it also, for my private life, it's much better for me to be able to work this way. Yeah. Well, all my work is inspired and takes a starting point in an interest in queer and trans thinking. And I'm interested in what does it mean to have a queer experience or queer body, queer sexuality that is to many people considered wrong or a failure. I'm interested in chaotic knowledge. What does it mean to feel differently? What does it mean to have different experiences? I try to look at different systems in society from queer perspectives more than looking at queerness as a thing in itself. So for me, queerness is very much about looking at the world, questioning it. Most of my work deal with language one way or another. And I was interested in making my own language or dealing with language from in other ways. And I was interested in looking at the body and thinking about the body language and how can the body talk. And I made some different series of work in woodcut printing where I was taking symbols of the language or knowledge of the language and trying to write with that. I did a series called Arguments for Desire, where I make a kind of abstract text with these little asterisks, stars that we know from the keyboard also, that often refer to that there is, if you write the asterisks in the text, that there is something you want to add or explain. But I also thought about that sign as the anus as a kind of letter or symbol of the body in a way. So I was making these different abstract texts with that as a way of making a queer body speak in its own language or in another way about desire and pleasure and questioning different expectations to queer sex or queer desire. In another piece, Klittdekregister, I also used kind of language of the body. I was making these rows of U shapes and thought of it as abstract sign, but also as a kind of language of the body again. So it's a row of U's that start from something that could be slightly larger than a clitoris and maybe too small to be a normal size penis. So trying again to work with something that was beyond the expected or the normal. Abstraction is interesting because I use it as a method to kind of queer what we think we know, or take something we know or recognize and work with it, make it abstract as a way to reconsider what we think we know about this object or symbol. I think I started to be interested in these signs because I'm interested in language. I just have a general interest in language, how to talk about feelings, how to talk about the body, how to have a conversation about love or emotions. These conversations we have with each other are so fundamentally grounded in ideas about how things are or from how we look. And when all these categories kind of doesn't really fit, then a starting point for me was to work with the language and to question the language, to kind of collide with the language, make new language, to think about what it does to a body, to a conversation, a friendship, a parent. And there's something about the wood that for me refers in a way to the body as a kind of organic material that also when you cut in that organic material, there's maybe a reference to expectations to a body in a way, and these cut can both be like a conflict or a fight with the material, to somehow speak against something, but also to speak in a different way. I worked with sculpture and installation in the beginning of my time in art school, and after being interested in feminist histories, queer thinking, I started to read a lot, and I also read a lot of poetry, and there was something about this language in relation to the body that is very appealing to me, that I wanted to work with language, and that started as drawings and text. I was writing also and have a writing practice. I often add my own texts, pieces or fragments onto the prints. So this conversation with image and language is something that you can see all the way through my works. And there's also a very physical mark from my body on the prints. So I feel my body is very present in the work, because it doesn't come out of a computer and has this distance to me. It's very physical mark of the hand, or little moves, or trying again and again with the same pattern or symbol, and you can see the changes because the body's not able to do exactly the same thing all the time. So these little changes are to me very important marks of a body being very present with this language and with this tool and this wood, and that is that is something that I like the media itself, but I also like the connection to my interest in queerness that to me is connected very well. Yeah. Some people have a very specific queer reading to it, and see queerness and desire in queer perspectives everywhere when they see my work, and that's fine. That is totally fine. I like that. Of course I do that too, because that's my starting point. I have often feedback from people who don't know what I'm working with or what it comes from, and who just start immediately to associate with different things that they have seen, that could be also text work or architect works, where they can mirror something into my work or see different things in my work, and I like that. Some people have when in the Arguments of this Desire series that I mentioned, some people see anuses all the time and other people see an abstract star, and I welcome all readings. Everyone can see that it mimics a language in a way, and that is also a nice reading, just to think about language and maybe a tonality or a speed or pace in language, or some people relate it to music, or so there are many different readings of it, and that I like that there is an openness to it. In my upcoming show, I'm working with geometry. It started as an idea of making a geometrical text or a geometrical alphabet, and I was writing different poems and compositions with geometry, triangles, pentagons, squares. So the title of my upcoming show is Woodbeds Brimming, and it came to me because I like to think about these text portraits also as a bed in a way, perhaps seen from above, where different things happens. Brimming, that something is completely full to the brim, or that person is filled up with something, emotion perhaps. It's an attempt to take a poetic approach to geometry that is a very specific thing, where things are right or wrong.